Yo, what's going on, guys? Crispy Flakes here. Welcome to Extra Crispy, man. So it's been a pretty interesting past 24 hours with the Jerami Grant trade. Yesterday, I did a video over on my other channel, Crispy Flakes. And yeah, that reaction was all emotion. So I'm calm. I'm collective. I have a better understanding of things now. And we are going to check out my dude, Sporting Logically's video about Jerami Grant, titled The Jerami Grant Trade is Perfect. Also, happy draft day to everybody. All those could be a bad take later, depending on who the Pistons get. But, you know, for good luck, got the Pistons hat. Got the Blake Griffin 2019 playoff run Pistons shirt. Got this shit, 50% off at Kroger, man, during the playoff run. Like, it was literally game 2, and they were already putting these on clearance. And we got swept. But, yeah, man. So let's go ahead. Get going on this.
NBA trade season is officially here. It's my favorite time of the year. And this is a really, really cool one.
I love it. I love it,
Grant
man.
going to Portland in exchange for a first
Not
round
the trade,
pick, and
trade
these two
season.
teams swapping second-round picks. At first, I was very confused. I didn't understand what was happening, but there's a very specific set of circumstances here that makes Portland the ideal place for Jerami Grant to go in terms of the future plans for Detroit's offseason. So let's talk about it. First up, we'll talk about the trade from Portland's perspective. So there have been a lot of rumors this entire offseason about Portland adding veterans. Like, their whole thing was not like, we're not trying to go through a 2-year rebuild with Damian
They're trying
Lillard.
to get OG.
They traded TJ McCollum with the intention of opening up some cap space and creating some flexibility and moving some picks around. This is a new front office. They've added what feels like 6 different assistant GMs. They have added a lot of forward thinkers in this front office. And what they're trying to do is allocate their assets in a way that allows them to be a good competitive team next year and moving forward. And that, for the most part, was going to involve them moving their top 10 pick in this draft, and then also future first-round picks as well. And in this scenario, they're trading a 2025 Milwaukee pick to Detroit in exchange for Jerami Grant. They're also swapping second-round picks, going from 36 to 46 to get Jerami Grant.
Everybody, you gotta realize this. The reason I'm so mad about it is because, I was probably delusional to I clearly was delusional to an extent, but, like, I was hearing rumors from multiple sources talk about the Pistons going for number 7. So I'm just saying, like, I understand it was, like, good, but, like, my expectations are just what I expected out of it. And that was just being a delusional fan, I guess. And also, the Pistons just really never have any leverage when it comes to trading for players.
From a value standpoint, is fantastic value. That's why I was so confused about the trade at first. I understand it better now from Detroit's perspective, which we'll get to later, but strictly in terms of value, Detroit could have traded Jerami Grant at any point in the last year and a half and gotten this kind of value. They could have gotten a single 2025 Milwaukee first-round pick that is, assuming that Giannis doesn't get hurt in some kind of catastrophic way, that's going to be a pick in the 20s. And like, Detroit could have gotten that value in exchange for Jerami Grant for a year and a half. And so the fact that Portland was able to make that happen now in this offseason, the fact they're able to add a player of Jerami Grant's caliber without giving up their top 10 pick, which still allows them to make another move here or just draft a player, it opens up so many possibilities for them. And it's basically like a free agency signing for them, because Jerami Grant's like $20 million contract goes onto their books this year, which limits some of their stuff this offseason. They can still do plenty in free agency, but then he's in expiring next offseason. So depending on how that works out, they still have plenty of options and plenty of flexibility for them. This is a fantastic deal, like an A++++ in terms of value, to not give up your own pick in this trade, to give up a 2020.
And that's the big thing that really pissed me off about the trade too, is that, like, I don't know, it seems like the Pistons, we always, like, bet on these, like, high-risk players, have that be, Josh Jackson or, Derrick Rose after his injuries. I mean, he played really solid for the Pistons. Blake Griffin coming off of an all-star season, everything like that. Oh, I guess, no, he had, like, the injuries next season and everything. But Jerami Grant, and just, like, he was a role player in Denver, and we gave him a pretty large contract. People said it was an overpay at the time. And it just seems like we never have anything to show for it, Like, we take these chances, and then we just don't, we don't get the benefits of taking on that risk. But I know a lot of that was, like, pre-Troy Weaver. I know that's what he's doing now. He's cleaning house to an extent, getting his guys up in there. And I don't know. I'm not saying, I guess not in this case, but, some of the cases of, obviously, with, like, Drummond and, I don't know, man, D-Rose and stuff. But
25 Milwaukee pick that is likely to be in the 20s.
It's kind of annoying.
For player Jerami Grant's caliber is fantastic. There's no, even if you don't like Jerami Grant, if you don't know what his role is going to be, it is great.
Third option is what he needs to be.
Now, speaking of his role, I also think this is kind of perfect. Portland has needed two-way wings for what feels like forever. When they were good, they had, like, Al Farouk Aminu out there playing at the 4, and he could guard a little bit and shoot a little bit. They always found a way to make guys, just good enough shooters to play amongst some wings that they brought in. Jerami Grant's significantly better than any wing they've had over the last couple of seasons, and someone that is really, really going to help this team. And also, depending on what they do with the rest of the roster, is still going to be allowed to be the offensive focal point that he went to Detroit to be. Not on the same level as when he was in Detroit. Obviously, Dame is going to be the number one guy. We'll see what else they bring in this offseason.
I did a rebuild on live stream here, I guess last night, and an issue I kept running into is because I ended up, trading for OG, and I had Jerami Grant and on Fernie Simons, and Damian kept on putting, Dame type of numbers. But the issue was everybody else was a third option. We didn't have that second option guy on the team. And I'm wondering, is it going to be Jerami Grant? Is it going to be somebody they trade for? Whoever they get with the pick? Who's going to be that solidified number 2 to Damian Lillard like CJ McCollum was? Maybe on Fernie Simons? I think he could be.
This isn't a situation where he's going to a contender and he's just going to go back to Denver Jerami Grant. They're still going to need his perimeter scoring
big time.
They're still going to need his shooting ability, and then he can still provide all that great defensive stuff. And like I said, it also allows Portland to have the flexibility to move him at the deadline if they want, sign him to an extension if they want, because he is an expiring contract going into 2023. That's also probably part of the reason why his value was a little bit lower here. But even with the expiring contract, the fact that you don't give up any players and you give up, the first round pick that they did for Jerami Grant is awesome. But way, way more interesting to me is what this means for Detroit, because I looked at this trade and I was beyond confused. Like I said,
so was I.
In my mind, Jerami Grant was going to get traded at some point this offseason or before the deadline, given the fact that he's an expiring contract, given the fact that there's no reason for Detroit.
My initial reaction is on Twitter at CrispyFlakes2K. I was just like, oh. Just that level of just well, this isn't real. Just oh.
Keep him. And I thought it was going to be 2 first, even if it's too late first. I thought Brooklyn was a team with their 2 Philadelphia picks that could have been involved. There are a lot of different teams.
Yeah, other teams should have tried.
That can put together a trade package involving 2 first-round picks and get Jerami Grant. I didn't really think that Detroit was super interested in where those picks fell. I think they just wanted assets. And ultimately, the fact that they traded them for just 1 was very confusing. But here is why this works so well for Detroit. They sent him specifically to Portland because they had a trade exception via the CJ McCollum deal during the season that fit Jerami Grant's salary perfectly. And the reason that's important is, 1, Portland doesn't have to give up any players, which is helpful for their value standpoint. And also, Detroit doesn't have to take a single bit of salary back in this deal. And what that allows.
So I guess when it comes to the offseason, because I know teams aren't falling their cap and everything like that. Can you trade players in the offseason just for picks without trade exceptions? I didn't know if that was a rule or not, but if that's true, that's definitely a very good point. I did not think about that in terms of trade exception, and that teams would need to have. I guess right now it probably wouldn't. Yeah, did not even think about that at all. That's
allows them to do is go way, way, way under the salary cap. They still have to figure out what they want to do with Marvin Bagley, but he's their only big-time free agent. And if you take away his contract for a moment, they have $65 million in payroll. They can pay a full max to any player that they want to on the market, most notably probably in this circumstance, DeAndre Ayton. Yes, they trade away Jerami Grant for what is probably lower value than they like, but if that lower value allows you to have a full max cap space slot and then go and sign somebody, it works out
it's perfectly a Jerami Grant
for them.
DeAndre
you get
trade.
This future first that you can use later. You get a higher second round pick, and you open up so much cap space. That's why he went to Portland. That's why there wasn't a team out there that could have offered two first round picks. Maybe there was a team that offered 2 first round picks, because I would imagine that if other teams found out that this is what it would have taken to get Jerami Grant, they would have stepped up and they would have said, hey, instead of this 2025 Milwaukee pick, we will give you the 15th pick in the draft, or we will give you 2 firsts, or whatever the case may be. Jerami Grant's value is higher than this, even on an expiring. But the fact that Portland could take his salary without sending any back, that is why he's now a Trailblazer. Now, there is a problem with this if you're Detroit. We have seen teams do similar things like this before, where you get lower value in exchange for a player while also getting out of the salary a little bit with the idea of signing a big-time player in free agency. Go back to last offseason when New Orleans basically dumped Lonzo Ball for nothing because they wanted to create salary cap space to sign Kyle Lowry, and they swung and they...
Yeah, and that's a big worry that I do have. I have a lot of Piston fans, reaching out to me saying, "Chris, but we got all this salary cap." But then I think about just like Detroit's not usually a free agent destination. So it's, while it could work out, I've seen a lot of times where it hasn't worked out. And that's my that's my thing with it. And then also you have to guarantee that you make sure you sign the right guys. Like I think about the summer where the Pistons had all this cap space. Team was still relatively pretty good too. And, Marcus Stoudemire was a free agent. I was excited about him. And we ended up signing Ben Gordon and Charlie Villanueva, which, in all fairness, Ben Gordon was a bucket on the Bulls and Charlie V was a stretch, before stretches were kind of a thing that were sought out. Pretty good athleticism. So, I get it, but I don't know.
They missed. They did not get Kyle Lowry, and they're in a fine position
now.
But at the time, it was one of my least favorite moves of the offseason. If Detroit doesn't get one of the guys that they are very clearly after by bringing in...
Wait, can we just say how the Pelicans got rid of Lonzo Ball to try to get Kyle Lowry? I know it was before this season, but still.
Or by, creating all the salary cap space. Then you're looking at a situation where if you don't use it, then you should have just gotten the 2 firsts for Jerami Grant. If there was not a trade out there that would have allowed them to get 2 first-round picks in exchange for Jerami Grant, I would be shocked. They very clearly chose this over better compensation so they could create salary cap space. And if it works, if they sign DeAndre Ayton and Phoenix doesn't want to sign him to a full max or whatever their plan is, like Miles Bridges or whatever the case may be. I don't think it's Levine. I don't think it's Harden. I don't think it's Beal. Whatever the case may be. If they make it work and they bring in a big-time free agent, again, right now I'm thinking it's probably DeAndre Ayton given the needs of their roster, then it works. Then it's a fantastic move. If it doesn't, and you start signing Miles Bridges to $30 million contracts, or you start signing a handful of random role players to these...
That's what I'm very afraid of, because like Miles Bridges is cool. I don't think he's worth a near max contract. But I think to get a guy like Miles Bridges in Detroit, you have to pay him a max contract, which is just, man, it's like we gotta pay a premium. It sucks. Like, it's not fun. I hate it. I hate
contracts. Then it doesn't work so well. So for right now, for Detroit, I'm going to give them a B+. Initially, I would have given them a much worse grade because I didn't understand the value. But now that I understand what they were trying to do from a salary perspective, it makes more sense.
Yeah, B+ because there's some risk.
The risk of not getting your guy would make me nervous. Now, having said all that, typically when these kinds of things happen, think about in 2019 when Brooklyn made trades in the offseason before free agency to create salary cap space, and ultimately they were successful in bringing in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. That's a whole different thing. We'll talk about that in a different video. That, to me, made it clear that like they had a plan. Like, teams don't give up value for nothing. Like, they don't give it...
Yeah, like, they're pretty smart people in the front office, I would say.
Is, given some of the moves they've made over the last 18 months. Teams don't just do this on accident. Like, they have to have some kind of insider information or some kind of... Not necessarily a guarantee, but a really...
I imagine that a GM, they just turn their phone on, they go to the Trade Finder app, only the NBA GMs and owners get it, flip through. Oh, I like that one, man. Send it over. Look at it like a fantasy basketball trade. Hey, I like it. Send it through, man. No other thoughts to it.
Strong feeling that they are going to be able to use this cap space on someone that they actually want and not just on filler pieces, and that is what makes the trade ultimately worth it. So, to me, like... This feels like a move where Detroit is going to end up with a big-time free agent this offseason. The problem with that is that DeAndre Ayton, who, again, that's just my best guess right now, is that's the guy they're trying to go and get.
That's who I'm thinking.
He's restricted. So, like, they could offer him the full max. And we all, like, nobody thinks that Phoenix wants to pay DeAndre Ayton the full max. And so, obviously, Detroit offers him that. The assumption is that they might let him go or work out a sign and trade. But if Phoenix just says, you know what, we're going to match it. We don't want to lose the value of DeAndre Ayton or a basketball team that just won 60-plus games, had one of the best records in NBA history over the last 2 decades. We'd rather not lose that guy.
I think the Suns match.
If that happens, then you're kind of in that situation where you didn't get the guy you were really hoping to by creating this cap space. And so maybe there is another player. Maybe there's an unrestricted free agent out there that I'm not thinking about that really wants to go to Detroit. Maybe it's Jalen Brunson. Maybe it's Lou Dort, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I'll take
Detroit has a way bigger opportunity to bring in one, maybe even 2 of those level players than they did before this trade, and that is why they made it. But the entirety of the success of this trade hinges on their ability to bring in the guy that they want or the 2 guys that they want. Because if all they get out of this trade is creating salary cap space to bring in role players and a 2025 first in exchange for Jerami Grant, that's a bad trade. But the possibility of that working for them, again, I give them a B+ for that. And so overall, like, this one is really, really fun. This is the kind of trade stuff that I love, where it's really nuanced and you have to really understand what's happening in the context of the situation, because the value in exchange for Jerami Grant doesn't make sense, even on an expiring, but the context and the situation makes it make sense. Like, if you're Portland, you have to be ecstatic that you're able to make this happen. Like, yes, it takes up $20 million in salary cap space.
It very well could be a win-win for both sides.
And yes, you have to deal with whatever his new contract is going to be on an expiring, assuming that it works. But like, they probably weren't going to get Zach LaVine or Bradley Beal or James Harden or any of these guys anyway. And it's not your own pick. Like, that 2025 Milwaukee pick to them means basically nothing at this point. Like, if you know, however old Dame is going to be in 2025, you're probably not going to be fantastic at that point anyway. They're trying to be good between this season 35. And like 2024 anyway. And this certainly helps them do that. Jerami Grant is an awesome fit for them. And now I can't wait to see what they do with their top 10 pick, whether they pick a player or what in my opinion, is more likely they're going to move that pick as well. And suddenly they've got Dame, they've got Jerami Grant. They still have some decisions to make in terms of Anthony Simons and Yusuf Nurkic. And then whoever they also bring in with this pick, this could be like, they're not going to be a championship contender or anything, but they could be like 2 moves away from being a contender, which, considering where they were in the middle of the season when they went into full tank mode, could be really, really good. Bottom line is.
All right, guys, that is...
I love trade.
All right, yeah, man. That's all we got for this video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Link to Sport Launch's channel in the description below. Peace out, my friends.